Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months, my mother shouted, her voice sharp and echoing through the sterile quiet of the hospital room. I sat frozen, gripping my phone with trembling hands. It was Christmas Eve at the Portland General Medical Center. The only sounds in the room came from the beeping monitor beside my bed and the soft giggles of my 3-year-old twins, Lucas and Lily, playing in the corner with a worn-out stuffed bunny. A nurse named Tasha was gently checking my vitals, her brow creased with concern. The pain in my lower abdomen was unbearable, hot, sharp, and constant, like someone had plunged a blade into me and twisted it every few seconds. But worse than the physical pain was the sting of hearing my mother's voice, distant and dismissive, treating my emergency like an inconvenience. My name is Elise Garner. I'm 36 years old. And for as long as I can remember, I've lived in the shadow of my younger brother, Ryan, the family pride and joy. He was the accomplished one, the golden boy who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the emotional one, the drama queen, the one who always needed something. Today, what I needed was someone to watch my kids while I was rushed into surgery for complications related to the stress and trauma of losing my husband, Darren, in a motorcycle accident just 6 months ago. I had no one else left to call. My closest friends were out of town with their families, and daycare centers were all closed for the holiday. My mother's face stared back at me through the video call, her expression cold and irritated. Behind her, I could see my father sipping eggnog, wrapped in his usual smug detachment. "Dad, please," I whispered, barely able to speak through the pain. "I've exhausted every option. I just need a few hours." He cut me off. "You're becoming a real burden, Elise. We're retired now. We finally get to live our lives without being dragged into your endless messes." His words pierced deeper than any scalpel ever could. I'd been helping them financially since they both took early retirement 4 years ago, $2,000 every month, like clockwork. I helped with their mortgage, utilities, even their vacation fund. And yet, in the moment I truly needed them, I was just a burden. Tears slid down my cheeks and onto the hospital blanket. Tasha gently rested a hand on my shoulder. "My sister Maya is a trauma-informed nanny," she said softly. "She's certified and has experience with children who've gone through loss. Let me call her for you." That small act of compassion unraveled me. I nodded, unable to speak. Lucas and Lily were still too young to understand what was happening, but they'd already lost their dad. The thought of them being left alone, or worse, with people who viewed them as an obligation, tore at me more than anything. As Tasha stepped out to make the call, I looked at my phone one last time. My parents were still on the screen, still talking about how this would ruin the night and make them late. Without another word, I ended the call. It was symbolic. It was final. A wave of memories surged forward, my high school awards tossed aside because Ryan had won a regional swim meet. My college graduation, ignored because Ryan had landed a junior analyst position. When I married Darren, they criticized the venue, the food, the guest list, everything except me. But this time, I wasn't begging. I wasn't explaining. I wasn't hoping. This time, I was choosing peace. And for the first time in my life, I realized, just because someone raises you doesn't mean they know how to love you. When Lucas and Lily were born, my parents visited exactly once. My mother complained that the babies were too fussy, and my father spent most of the visit in the guest room watching TV with the volume too loud. I remember standing in the kitchen afterward, swaying with Lily in my arms, wondering why I kept trying so hard to win their approval. Darren, my late husband, had understood. He knew all too well what it felt like to be let down by the people who were supposed to love you the most. He'd been estranged from his own father for years, and when I cried over my parents' indifference, he would gently wipe my tears and say, "We'll build our own family, one that actually knows how to love." And we did. Our home was full of warmth, music, silly dances in the kitchen, and the quiet security of being loved without conditions. But 6 months ago, all of that was ripped away. A drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into Darren's car. He didn't survive. I was left alone, grieving, broken, and trying to raise our children while keeping a smile on my face for them. Despite my loss, I continued supporting my parents. I even increased the monthly amount when they mentioned struggling with inflation. I told myself I was doing the right thing, being better than they had ever been to me. I believed family meant showing up, even when it was hard. But the irony crushed me. There I was, bleeding internally, possibly dying, and they couldn't miss a single concert to be there for their only grandchildren. Tasha, the nurse, returned quietly with an update. Olivia will be here in less than an hour, she said. She's amazing with kids. Used to work with trauma patients at Portland Children's Hospital before she went private. A flicker of hope stirred in me. How much will this cost? I asked, anxiety creeping in like a shadow. Medical bills were already piling up. Darren's insurance hadn't covered everything, and my own job didn't offer benefits until the new year. Tasha knelt beside me. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's get you through this surgery first. But I was worried. I thought about the $2,500 I was scheduled to transfer to my parents' account next week. Money I'd always justified as an act of love. Money that could now help pay for someone who genuinely cared about my children's well-being. That thought sparked something deep inside me, a quiet, glowing ember I hadn't felt in years. It was self-preservation. A tiny, stubborn refusal to keep sacrificing myself for people who couldn't even be bothered to ask if I was okay. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Tasha had promised. Kind, composed, and immediately attuned to Lucas and Lily. They clung to her in a way that told me they felt safe. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. As hospital staff began prepping me for surgery, I turned to Tasha. Could you bring me my phone one more time? With shaking hands, I typed out 2 messages. The first was to my bank. Cancel all future automatic transfers to the Garner's account. Effective immediately. The second was to my parents. I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Don't contact me again. As they wheeled me into the operating room, something surprising rose within me, not fear, not even sorrow. It was freedom. The surgery was successful, but recovery took longer than expected. I spent 5 days in the hospital, drifting in and out of sleep, while Olivia stayed with the twins. She brought them to visit during the day and took them back to my apartment at night. She even left little notes and photos of their drawings beside my hospital bed. One afternoon, in a more lucid moment, I noticed my phone blinking with notifications. 27 missed calls. Dozens of texts. All from my parents and Ryan. The messages followed a predictable pattern: confusion, then outrage, then desperation. You can't just cut us off like this. We're counting on that money. We have bills too. Is this because of the concert? You're being unreasonable. We're your family. Not once did they ask if the surgery went well. Not once did they ask how Lucas or Lily were doing. And that told me everything I needed to know. We've already planned a cruise next month, and the tickets are non-refundable, my mother had written, as if that somehow justified their absence while I was in the hospital, bleeding and scared. My brother Ryan's messages were different. Genuinely confused. Mom and Dad said you were just having some routine thing. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money? It hit me then, they had lied to him. Downplayed the severity of my emergency to preserve their image. They didn't want to look bad for skipping out on their grandkids during a life-or-death situation. So they twisted the truth to justify their choice. Still foggy from medication but driven by something sharper than pain, clarity, I sent Ryan a full, honest account. I told him about the internal bleeding, the emergency surgery, how I'd been alone with my kids on Christmas Eve when I reached out to our parents in desperation. His response came quickly. Oh my God, Elise. I had no idea. They told me it was some outpatient thing and you were overreacting. If I'd known, I would have come. I would have watched the twins. I'm so sorry. And I believed him. Ryan wasn't heartless. He had just been raised in an environment where he was always shielded, always protected, always told that he came first. Maybe this moment would be the beginning of him seeing our parents for who they really were. By the time I was discharged 5 days later, I had made several key decisions, ones that, for the first time in a long time, felt like they were for me. First, I officially hired Olivia part-time to help care for Lucas and Lily during my recovery. She'd already proven herself to be loving, responsible, and attentive, everything I needed in my corner. Second, I contacted a lawyer to draft a formal will. I named a trusted friend, my longtime colleague Danica, as the twins' legal guardian in case something happened to me. Certainly not my parents. That ship had sailed. Third, I blocked my parents' numbers completely. I allowed Ryan limited contact, but only while I assessed how sincere he truly was moving forward. I wasn't ready to offer blind trust to anyone anymore. Trust had to be earned now. The financial impact of cutting off my parents was significant, yes, but also freeing. That $2,500 a month I'd been sending was nearly a third of my income as a freelance graphic designer. Without it, I could finally afford proper childcare and begin rebuilding the emergency fund I'd drained after Darren's death. That night, back in my own bed, the twins asleep in their room across the hall, I lay awake feeling a complicated tangle of emotions. Guilt, deep, programmed guilt, for putting myself and my kids first. Fear, about healing, about parenting solo, about money. But something else was there too. Something steadier. Self-respect. My phone buzzed beside me. It was Ryan again. I just had a huge blowout with Mom and Dad. I told them how cruel they've been to you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? I stared at the message, stunned. Maybe I wasn't completely alone after all. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was still sore, the incision pulled sharply if I moved too fast, but I was managing. Olivia arrived every morning with a smile and kept the kids laughing and safe while I worked from home. My clients had been more understanding than I expected. One even sent a care package. Ryan had visited twice. He brought meals and spent time with the twins, his usual joke softened by concern. Our conversations were cautious, both of us unsure where this new honesty would lead, but during his second visit, something shifted. He opened up. Not just about our parents, but about the pressure he'd always felt to be the perfect son. About how lonely that pedestal could be. Maybe we both had wounds to heal. But at least now, we weren't pretending they didn't exist. They always made it seem like you were the one choosing to stay away, Ryan admitted one quiet evening as we watched Lucas and Lily play with their building blocks. I never realized they were the ones pushing you out. There was a raw honesty in his voice I hadn't heard in years. I looked over at him, my brother, the golden child, the one who had always unknowingly benefited from our parents' favoritism, and for the first time, I didn't feel resentment. Just sadness for both of us. He'd been lied to too, just in a different way. Maybe we were both collateral damage in their need to control. I wasn't ready to hand him my trust on a silver platter, but I appreciated the effort he was making. I could see glimpses of the person he might have become in a different family. Then came the knock I had half expected since the day I cut them off. I moved slowly to the door, heart pounding. Through the peephole, I saw them, my parents. My mother clutched her designer handbag like it was a life vest, while my father stood next to her, arms crossed, exuding that familiar brand of tense impatience. I opened the door just enough to speak. "What do you want?" My voice was steadier than I expected. "Elise, darling," my mother began, her tone syrupy sweet, "we've been so worried. You haven't returned our calls. We just wanted to make sure you and the twins were all right." Her fake concern immediately raised my defenses. "We're fine," I said flatly. "If that's all." "It's not all," my father interrupted, pushing slightly against the door as if that might intimidate me. "We need to talk about this financial mess. The bank called us. We had to dip into our cruise savings to cover the mortgage payment." The audacity was stunning. Not a single question about my recovery. No mention of the children. Just panic over their missed payment. I told you I'm done financially supporting you, I replied, unmoving. And I meant it. My mother's voice rose, her eyes wide with disbelief. But sweetie, we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I have built our lifestyle around your monthly commitment. You can't just pull the rug out from under us. My commitment? I echoed, stunned. I've been sending money out of guilt while you couldn't be bothered to help me during emergency surgery. You didn't even ask if I was okay. My father's face darkened. That's not fair, Elise. We had plans. Plans that were more important than your daughter's life? Than your grandchildren's safety? I replied, the anger swelling in my chest. The surgeon said I might not survive. Did either of you ever ask how the operation went? Their silence was answer enough. My mother dropped the act for a moment, her tone suddenly heavy. We made one mistake. Are you really going to punish us like this? This isn't punishment, I said quietly, feeling an unexpected calm settle over me. This is consequence. I've spent my whole life trying to earn your approval. And in my darkest hour, you picked Elton John over your own family. My father's eyes narrowed. We're your parents. And I'm a parent too, I said, standing taller. I would never treat Lucas and Lily the way you've treated me. Just then, Lily toddled into the hallway, her stuffed giraffe dangling from her small hand. My mother's demeanor flipped instantly. There's my precious grandbaby, she cooed, bending down theatrically. Grandma brought presents. But Lily, sensing the tension, clutched the giraffe tighter and inched behind my leg, uncertainty in her big brown eyes. I reached down and held her hand. I think you should leave, I said quietly. When I'm ready to talk, I'll let you know. And with that, I closed the door, firmly, finally. For once, it stayed shut. If I'm ever ready, I'll reach out. But the money, I said calmly, cutting off my father's protest, is no longer your concern. And with that, I gently closed the door. The next morning, they returned, with reinforcements. Through the peephole, I saw Aunt Linda, my mother's older sister, standing beside them. Linda had always styled herself as the family peacemaker, the one who could smooth things over with a few hugs and emotionally loaded clichés. Elise, honey, let's be reasonable, Aunt Linda called through the closed door. Your parents are struggling without your help. I kept my voice even as I responded through the door. They managed their finances for decades before I ever sent them a cent. They chose early retirement, knowing they didn't have the savings to sustain it. That's not my burden. My mother's voice cut in, more desperate this time. We made those decisions because you promised to help us. We had to cancel our cruise, Elise. And now, we might lose the house. Her tone was laced with dramatics, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. Now that I had stepped out of the fog of guilt they'd cloaked me in for years, I could finally see their manipulation clearly. When had I ever promised lifelong support? I'd offered temporary help after their retirement, back when I thought they'd made that choice responsibly. But somewhere along the way, my assistance had become an expectation, a given, a duty. I'm recovering from major surgery, I said firmly. I'm caring for 2 toddlers. This conversation is over. Then I walked away. I didn't answer when they continued knocking. I didn't respond when my phone buzzed with calls. I sat on the floor with Lily and Lucas and colored with them, determined to give my energy to people who actually needed me. Later that day, a group email from my father landed in the inboxes of every relative with a Gmail account. Subject: Family support in difficult times. In the body of the email, he detailed how I had abandoned them in their hour of need after they had sacrificed everything for me. He painted a portrait of betrayal, conveniently leaving out their refusal to help during my emergency surgery. There was no mention of the concert, of course, only that I had cut them off financially without reason. What they didn't anticipate was the backlash. My cousin Darren, who lived near my parents and knew them better than they realized, hit reply all. Uncle David, didn't you just buy a new boat last month? And Aunt Carol, weren't you showing off that diamond bracelet at Thanksgiving? Other relatives followed. Some asked quiet questions via private message. A few expressed concern. And several, more than I expected, called to say they stood with me. Even Aunt Linda called me directly. Her tone was quieter this time. I had no idea about your surgery, she admitted. They told me you were being dramatic about a minor checkup. That you were just punishing them over money. No, I replied, simply. I'm protecting my peace. Meanwhile, Ryan had taken a firm stance in my corner. He'd seen firsthand what our parents had become. He helped me draft a calm, factual response to the family email thread. I recently underwent emergency surgery with a significant risk of complications. My parents refused to watch my children during this time due to a concert. I am now focusing on my recovery and caring for my twins without additional stress. That was all. No drama. No accusations. Just facts. And the support poured in. Darren's wife dropped off homemade casseroles and soups, still warm in foil pans. A second cousin I barely remembered offered to babysit part-time, free of charge. Ryan started spending more weekends here, getting to know his niece and nephew and helping around the apartment. But the most surprising gesture came from Tasha, the nurse who'd stayed with me in the hospital. She reached out with a card and an offer I never expected. Tasha, the nurse who'd been by my side in the hospital, surprised me with a thoughtful card and a folded piece of paper tucked inside. It was a flyer. Support Circle, widowed parents under 40, virtual meetup every Thursday. She'd written at the bottom, I think this might be good for you. You're not alone. I joined the Zoom call the next evening while the twins were napping, not knowing what to expect. But by the time the hour was up, I found myself crying, not from pain or grief, but from relief. For the first time since Darren died, I felt understood. These were people who had walked through the same fire, partners gone too soon, children too young to understand, and a crushing loneliness no one else could quite grasp. It wasn't therapy. It was solidarity. And I hadn't realized how much I needed it. Meanwhile, my parents' financial situation was spiraling fast. Turns out, their polished facade was built on shaky ground. They hadn't just relied on my monthly contributions, they depended on them. Jessica, who had started asking more questions, eventually discovered they'd taken out a second mortgage on their home a year ago to buy the boat. They assumed you'd keep paying indefinitely, she said, clearly stunned after helping them comb through their bank statements at their request. They've been lying to everyone. They're not destitute, they're just reckless. If they sold the boat and their timeshare, they'd be fine. But of course, that wasn't what they wanted to hear. Their voicemails turned frantic. Their texts became increasingly emotional, manipulative, and desperate. But with each attempt, their hold on me weakened. I wasn't scared of their disapproval anymore. I wasn't aching for their love. I was building something new, from the ashes of their betrayal, a support system grounded in real care, not conditional obligation. A month after my surgery, I got the call from Jessica. They got a foreclosure notice, she said. The bank's giving them 60 days to make up the missed payments or the house goes. I adjusted Lily on my hip as I listened. What about their retirement savings? Jessica sighed. Mostly gone. They bought that boat outright, and then Dad sunk a big chunk into some shady investment his golf buddy pitched. They lost nearly everything. She paused. I'm not saying you should help them, Elise. I just thought you should know. That evening, the texts came in. This time, there was no pretense of concern. No fake warmth. Just begging. My father's message was blunt. We're about to lose everything. You have to help us. My mother's was worse. We never thought you'd actually cut us off. We assumed you were just angry, that you'd send the money again after a week or two. That line, that assumption, burned hotter than anything else. They never believed my boundaries were real. They never believed I would choose myself over them. But I had. And I would again. Meanwhile, my own life was shifting in ways I hadn't expected. The support group had become a lifeline, connecting me with others who'd been forced to rebuild their lives from the ground up. Through it, I met Diana, a real estate agent whose husband had passed from cancer 2 years earlier, leaving her with a young son. We connected instantly. She was the one who planted the idea that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to stay stuck in this cramped apartment where every corner reminded me of what I'd lost. "You've got equity here," she said. "You could move to a quieter neighborhood, one with better child care options. Maybe even get a place with a little backyard for the twins." And she was right. For the first time, I considered a future that wasn't just about surviving. I'd also quietly launched a small side business, designing custom memorial websites. Inspired by the one I made for Darren, I found meaning in helping others honor their loved ones. Several members of my support group had already signed on. Word about my memorial website business was spreading. What started as a tribute to Darren had become something meaningful, not just to others, but to me. Several members of my support group had commissioned sites, and a few referrals came from them too. For the first time since becoming a widow, I felt something resembling purpose again. Not just surviving. Living. The contrast between my progress and my parents' unraveling couldn't have been clearer, especially when they showed up again, unannounced, at my apartment door. This time, they came armed. A manila folder in my father's hand held a spreadsheet, printed in color, highlighted, and marked with sticky notes. He held it out like a peace offering. Or a bill. "We need $144,000, he said, his tone strained, the usual edge of superiority replaced with a quiet desperation. "To bring the mortgage current and avoid foreclosure." I let them in. Not because I owed them anything, but because I was curious. I wanted to hear what they had to say now that they were standing on ground that wasn't mine to keep steady anymore. They sat stiffly at my small dining table, surrounded by toys, sippy cups, and stacks of children's books. "What about selling the boat?" I asked, folding my arms. My father winced. "We'd take a loss." "And the timeshare?" "We've tried," my mother jumped in. "But the market's awful right now. And besides, those were our retirement luxuries." I nearly laughed. Luxuries. That they still thought they were entitled to, despite their choices. Despite everything. "Luxuries you can't afford," I said simply. "We could afford them, with your help," my father snapped, some of his old self returning. "It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you." I looked him straight in the eye. "What exactly have you done for me?" The question landed like a brick on the table. The silence stretched. At that moment, the twins wandered into the room. Ethan clutched his favorite toy truck. Emily babbled something cheerful as she toddled over to me, holding onto my leg. Their faces softened instantly. "There are our precious babies," my mother said, reaching her hands out toward Emily. Emily, unfamiliar with these near strangers, ducked behind my legs and clung to me. "They don't know you," I said. "You've seen them maybe 3 times. You chose not to be involved." "That's not fair," my father protested. "We're busy people." I raised an eyebrow. "Too busy for your only grandchildren? Too busy to help your daughter during emergency surgery? But not too busy to ask for money?" He looked away. "That says everything about your priorities," I finished. My mother's expression crumpled, whether from real emotion or another performance, I couldn't tell anymore. "Without your help, we'll lose everything," she whispered. "I lost my husband," I replied, my voice clear and even. "My children lost their father. And we survived. You will too." 3 months after my surgery, the inevitable came. They sold the house. Jessica kept me updated. I didn't reach out. I didn't need to. They found a modest 2-bedroom condo in a nondescript complex, a far cry from their former 4,000 square foot lakefront showpiece. My father had sold the boat, at a significant loss. The timeshare, gone too, sold for pennies. "They're blaming you," Jessica told me during one of her weekend visits. "In front of everyone. Telling anyone who'll listen that you betrayed them. That you promised lifelong support and then just abandoned them." I sipped my tea and looked out the window, where the twins were drawing on the sidewalk with chalk. "Let them talk," I said. "The truth speaks for itself." And it did. My extended family knew what really happened. They had seen the receipts. Heard the voicemails. Read the email chain. But more than anything, they had watched the way I stood tall when everything around me fell apart. Even my father's sister, Aunt Lorraine, who had always taken his side in every family argument, reached out to me. She said she was stunned after hearing how my parents refused to help during my surgery. "I didn't know it had gotten that bad," she told me. "You didn't deserve that, Elise." For someone who had once treated me like the black sheep, her words meant something. Meanwhile, my own life was steadily improving. With Diana's help from the support group, I'd purchased a cozy 3-bedroom house in a quiet, family-friendly Portland neighborhood. The mortgage was actually lower than the rent I had paid for my cramped apartment, and best of all, the twins finally had a backyard. Watching Ethan chase butterflies while Emily plopped down in the grass with sidewalk chalk felt like reclaiming something I didn't know I'd lost. My side business designing memorial websites was thriving. It had started as a tribute to Darren but had grown into a full-blown service that brought comfort to dozens of grieving families. It meant something. So much so, that I was able to reduce my freelance graphic design work and focus almost entirely on this new, meaningful path. Olivia still helped with childcare 3 days a week, giving me time to focus and recover, but I'd rearranged my schedule to spend more hours with Ethan and Emily. For the first time since Darren's death, I didn't feel like I was just keeping my head above water, I felt like I was swimming. And then there was the community. Neighbors dropped off casseroles and offered help when we moved in. The support group organized playdates at the local park. Jessica had turned into the sister I always hoped she could be. Less competition, more connection. Even Tasha, the nurse who had first shown me compassion in that hospital room, occasionally stopped by with her own kids for weekend coffee and backyard games. I had lost my husband. I had severed ties with my parents. And yet, somehow, I felt less alone than I ever had. 6 months after my surgery, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address on the front, but I recognized my mother's careful cursive right away. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. Inside was something I'd never seen before from her, an honest apology. Underscore 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 underscore. "I've had time to reflect on my behavior," she wrote. "Watching you build a life without our help has forced me to confront some painful truths about myself as a mother. I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't seem to need me the way I needed my own mother." She went on, "But now I see that you did need me, just not in the way I wanted to be needed. When you asked us to care for the twins during your surgery, you were reaching out. And we failed you. Completely. I'm deeply sorry." She explained how they had overhauled their finances. My father had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They'd sold most of their luxury items. They were living modestly for the first time in decades. She didn't ask for money. Or forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. I showed the letter to Jessica. She raised an eyebrow. "They'd been talking about writing to you for weeks. Dad was against it at first. But," she hesitated. "I think he's starting to get it. Especially after his heart scare." My stomach tightened. "Heart scare?" "Just high blood pressure and chest pains," Jessica explained. "But it scared him. He's on medication now. Following the doctor's orders. It humbled him a little." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready. Was it remorse, or strategy? Had they changed, or simply adapted? I needed time. And for once, I wasn't rushing my response. That night, after Jessica left with the twins, I found myself pulling out an old photo album for the first time in years. The glossy pages held memories from birthday parties, school plays, family vacations, smiling faces frozen in time. But as I flipped through them, I saw something new. A pattern I'd been too young to recognize before. Behind those carefully arranged scenes of family joy were the quiet absences, the way I was always slightly out of frame, or overshadowed by Ryan's achievements. My parents had always been performers, playing the role of doting parents in public while serving their own needs first. A year after my surgery, I agreed to meet them, not at their place, and not mine, but a quiet cafe near my new home. Neutral ground. Jessica had offered to take the twins for the afternoon. I wasn't ready for a family reunion. Not yet. When my parents walked in, I barely recognized them. My father, once so imposing, looked smaller. His proud, square-shouldered stance was gone. My mother had traded in her usual designer wardrobe for jeans and a cardigan. We sat in awkward silence until my father did something I never expected. He cried. "I've been a terrible father," he said, his voice rough. "And an even worse grandfather. I don't expect forgiveness. But I see it now. How selfish we've been." My mother looked at me, hands folded on the table. She didn't reach for mine, but her gesture was tentative, open. "We've been going to family therapy," she said softly. "Jessica pushed us into it. We resisted for months. But it's changed us." I didn't rush to forgive. I didn't promise anything. Instead, I pulled out photos of Ethan and Lily and told them about our life, the house, the garden, the bedtime stories and backyard chalk art. And for the first time, they just listened. No defensiveness. No redirecting. No guilt-tripping. As we parted, my father asked, would it be possible, someday, to know our grandchildren? I looked at him carefully. That depends. Not on your words, but on your actions. We can start with short, supervised visits. But know this, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother. As I walked away, I felt no weight. No resentment. Just calm. Because I knew exactly who I was now. And I wasn't asking for permission to be her. If my story resonated with you, even a little, I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment below. Tell me your thoughts, your reactions, or your own story. I didn't share all of this for sympathy. I shared it because I know what it feels like to question your worth, to carry guilt that was never yours, and to finally choose yourself after years of being someone else's backup plan. If you've ever felt torn between loyalty and self-respect, you're not alone. And I want you to know, it's never too late to draw your line, to say enough, and to reclaim your voice. To the people following my journey, thank you. Your support, your encouragement, your belief in me, it matters. And to anyone who wants to support me and others like me, don't underestimate the power of a kind word, a listening ear, or simply acknowledging that setting boundaries doesn't make us cold, it makes us whole. Comment something you'd want someone like me to hear after a long, hard road. Because someone out there needs that same message too. And here's my advice, from one survivor to another, stop waiting for permission to protect your peace. Stop shrinking yourself to maintain a version of love that doesn't see you. If your boundaries make people uncomfortable, let them be uncomfortable. Growth is never painless, but neither is staying small. You are allowed to be the hero of your own life. You're allowed to choose healing, even if it means walking away from the people who taught you to bleed for them. You're allowed to change. So stand up. Speak your truth. And never again apologize for doing what it takes to become the version of yourself that finally feels free. I did it. And you can, too.